They told us Antarctica was dead, lifeless, sterile, a wasteland of wind and ice stretching in every direction. But last night, under a blood-red sky and a temperature so cold it made your thoughts brittle, I saw something moving. Something massive. Something that shouldn't exist. We'd been at Amsler Station for 5 weeks, monitoring climate fluctuations and drilling ice cores that dated back hundreds of thousands of years. The data was clean. The atmosphere wasn't. Something in the air, electromagnetic pulses or pressure distortions, was triggering anomalous readings on our instruments. We thought it was solar interference, until we saw the tracks. They weren't ordinary tracks. They were clawed. 12 of them, and each one was the size of a dinner plate. Dr. Curry Helverson, our biologist, first noticed them. She was outside checking the borehole integrity when she radioed in, breathless, thinking we were playing some kind of prank. But there was no humor in her voice. "Guys," she whispered, "they lead right up to the supply cache." We suited up and joined her within minutes. I led the group. My name's Dr. Miles Petrov, climatologist. Not exactly trained for field combat, but I felt an obligation to protect my team. The wind was brutal, stinging our cheeks like glass. The sky had turned an unnatural red hue. Not aurora, not dusk, just wrong. Kari knelt beside the tracks, one gloved hand hovering over a deep impression in the snow. The claw marks were sharp, precise. Too symmetrical to be a bear, too large to be human. "They're fresh," she muttered. "An hour old, maybe less." We followed them around the storage crates, past the generator shed, and then back again to our camp. That was the part that shook me the most. These weren't wandering tracks. These were hunting trails. Something had circled us, watched us, maybe even touched the outer walls. Later that night, our power flickered. The communications array sputtered and died. The satellite uplink went completely dark. The emergency systems should have kicked in, but instead, the room was bathed in crimson from the emergency exit lights. I was in the lab when I heard it. The sound of breathing. Heavy, wet, right outside the bulkhead door. I froze. Every instinct in me screamed to move, to run, but I stood paralyzed. A low groan vibrated through the metal. The door creaked, not open, just pressured, as if something on the other side was testing it. And then the smell hit. Rot, earth, something ancient and hungry. When I finally found the courage to approach the reinforced window, the hallway outside was empty. No footprints, no claw marks, but there was moisture, as if something warm had been standing there, melting the frost. Then it moved. Upright. A silhouette against the wind. By morning it was gone. The next 2 days spiraled into chaos. The generator fuel was siphoned out, rations were torn open, and we found the ice tunnel, our borehole, collapsed from the inside, as if something had clawed its way up. No seismic activity, no natural cause. Kari and I reviewed the station's thermal camera footage. We expected glitches, artifacts. Instead, we found something far worse. At 3:17 a.m., during a whiteout blizzard, the cameras picked up a figure walking upright across the field, not lumbering like a bear, not bundled like a human. Tall, skeletal, with arms that reached below its knees, and a gait that didn't match anything in human or animal biomechanics. Frame by frame, it moved closer to the camera. At 3:19 a.m., it stopped just outside our dome. It looked up. At 3:20, the feed cut to static. That night, Kari didn't sleep. None of us did. We started to make plans to evacuate, pack up, signal the chopper early, abandon the site if needed. But then the storm came. A Category 5 whiteout, no visibility, and wind speeds upwards of 80 knots. We were trapped. 2 nights later, Dr. Malik disappeared. He'd gone out to check the backup batteries and never returned. His tether was severed. The snow around the post was disturbed, torn apart. There was blood in the snow and a trail, a drag mark. Kari and I followed it for 40 yards until it stopped abruptly, as if whatever took him had just vanished, or taken him below. That was when I started hearing things, whispers in the static of our radios, clicking sounds in the walls, the humming of our instruments slowing, distorting, becoming tonal, as if someone was mimicking their pitch. Last night, I woke up to see a face pressed against my window, but there's no platform outside my window. It's a vertical wall, 2 stories high. And yet, it was there. Mouth hanging open, wider than it should be, eyes black and sunken, like deep ocean voids, skin stretched and torn like dried leather, and a smile, not of joy, but of recognition, like it knew me, like it was waiting. Now there are only 4 of us left, and the storm hasn't stopped in 6 days. Kari wants to head north, says there's an old Soviet outpost about 40 miles across the ice, Station Primo. Maybe we can make it. Maybe we'll find a long-range comm unit. Maybe we'll find answers. Or maybe we'll find what they left behind. All I know is this: there is evil here, and it's awake. We left Amsler Station under a sky that looked like bruised flesh. There were 4 of us when we left. There were only 3 by the 2nd hour. Elliot was the youngest. Our communications technology always cracking jokes, always trying to keep morale up, even after Malik vanished. I'll never forget the sound he made when it happened, this sharp, panicked yelp that cut short too fast. We were crossing a wind-swept ice ridge when he stopped, just turned his head like he'd heard something. The next second, he was gone. No scream, no struggle, just silence. We backtracked. Nothing, no hole, no tracks. The snow had settled like fresh ash, untouched. It was as if the earth had opened for a moment to swallow him, then sealed up again, perfectly smoothed. Kari stood still for a long time, face pale, wind tearing at her hood. "I think it's hunting us," she said. "It's not random. It waits, watches." I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that this was a terrible accident, but I couldn't. Not after what I saw at the station, not after the tracks. We pressed on. At night we took shifts sleeping in the thermal tent. Whoever was awake kept the flare gun close. The second night I awoke to Kari screaming. She'd been outside, relieving herself, when she saw something moving under the ice, beneath her feet. It glided like a serpent, its outline barely visible. Long skeletal arms, head too small. It pressed itself against the surface, studying her. Then it vanished again, deeper into the glacier. She didn't sleep again after that. On the 4th day, the wind finally died down. The silence was deafening. No birds, no wind shear, no movement, just a flat white desert, stretching on forever. That's when we saw it. Station Primo. It jutted out of the ice like a rusted coffin, half buried, the red star emblem still visible above the main hatch. The surrounding outbuildings had collapsed. Antennas bent and snapped. A single spotlight flickered weakly, powered by some ancient generator still coughing out electricity. As we approached, I saw the ice was cracked in spiderweb patterns all around the building, like something large had walked here repeatedly. We reached the hatch and tried the door. Frozen solid. Theo, our geologist, and the last remaining crew member used a pickaxe to pry it open. The screech of rusted metal echoed into the cold. Inside, the darkness swallowed our flashlight beams like a hungry mouth. Station Primo smelled of rot and formaldehyde. The walls were lined with peeling paint and frost. Old Russian writing marked each corridor, most of it warning signs. No unauthorized entry, biohazard containment, do not open. We passed doors that were welded shut. One was chained, padlocked with layers of old warning tape still fluttering in the cold air. We set up in the old mess hall, turned lab. It had been repurposed by someone more recently than the 1980s. There were fresh papers on the table, typed in English, notes detailing autopsies, growth rates, strange cellular regeneration. Before we move on, please donate me in the form of subscribe. Scrawled across one page in red ink was the phrase, "They do not die, they wait." That night, Theo went exploring without telling us. When we woke, he was gone. His sleeping bag was still zipped, blood frozen into the fleece. We searched every corridor. Kari found him in the lower research chamber. He was still alive, barely, lying against the cold tiles, shaking. Both his eyes were missing, not torn out, but neatly scooped, as if extracted surgically. His lips were blue, skin cracked like paper. He whispered one word before dying. "Grandfather." It made no sense. None of us understood it, until we reached the deepest chamber. Down a stairwell filled with ice and decay, through a steel door that looked recently opened. Inside were dozens of metal cots and broken monitors. And sitting at a table beneath a dim, hanging light was a man, alive, old, gaunt. His skin looked bleached, paper-thin, but his eyes, black irises, ringed with grey, were wide open and sharp. He stood when we entered, and in a voice that trembled with age and fever, he said, "Miles, I knew you would come." I froze. It couldn't be. "My name is Dr. Victor Petrov," he said. "I'm your grandfather." "That's impossible. Victor Petrov died in 1987. The family held a funeral. We buried an empty casket." Kari looked at me like she'd seen a ghost. "I've been waiting," he said. "They're learning, adapting, and soon they'll be free of this place." Behind him, against the back wall, I noticed something frozen into the ice. A body. No, multiple bodies. Soviet uniforms, scientists, all preserved. Some torn open, as if dissected. Some fused to the walls, eyes wide in silent screams. One of them was Victor Petrov, or someone who looked exactly like him. I stepped back. The man in front of me, my grandfather, only smiled. "The ice keeps secrets, Miles," he said, "but it can't hold them forever." And from somewhere deep beneath Station Primo, we heard it. A low, rhythmic pounding. Like a heartbeat. No, not like one. A real one. Coming closer. The sound didn't stop. It was muffled and deep, like something colossal and breathing beneath the station. It came in thumps, wet, deliberate, patient. Each one made the floor tremble just slightly beneath our boots. Kari clutched her coat tighter, knuckles white around the grip of the flare gun. My supposed grandfather, Dr. Victor Petrov, just stood there, watching the frost-dusted ceiling, as though waiting for something familiar. "They were buried before we walked upright," he said quietly, "before we learned to light fires. The Soviets called them pervobitne, the originals. They've been here longer than—" We found a cavern. We thought it was empty. Another thump. Closer now. He walked slowly to a freezer unit in the back of the room and opened it. Inside were files, hundreds of them, frostbitten, handwritten in both Russian and English. He tossed one on the table. Kari grabbed it and skimmed through. The pages detailed autopsies, performed not on animals or humans, but something in between. Creatures with humanoid skeletal structures, elongated limbs, triple-jointed knees. One entry mentioned regenerative tissue still active after 72 hours post-mortem. Another included a crude drawing of the creature's head. Hollow eyes, no mouth, skin like a jellyfish stretched thin across a bone structure. I saw my own name on the last page. Subject, M. Petrov, priority genetic marker confirmed. Observation protocol initiated. I nearly dropped the folder. "What the hell is this?" I demanded. "Why is my name in a report from before I was born?" Victor's expression was almost tender. "Because you were always meant to come here. You carry my blood. It recognizes you." Kari looked at him like he was insane. "What recognizes him?" "The originals," Victor whispered. "They're not just creatures. They're not animals. They're architects. They mold flesh. They shape minds. They wait until the right pieces are on the board. I backed away, my heart hammering. You're talking about destiny like this is some prophecy. We're scientists. There's no line between science and myth here, only the illusion of safety. Suddenly, all the lights went out. The sound that followed wasn't the groan of failing power or the howl of wind. It was skittering. Dozens of limbs moving at once, from beneath the floorboards, from the vents, from inside the walls. Kari fired a flare upward out of instinct. The whole chamber bathed in red light, and for one frozen instant, I saw what the darkness had hidden. Figures clinging to the ceiling like spiders. Pale, eyeless, their skin glistening like boiled meat. Their arms were too long. Their torsos opened vertically, revealing rows of twitching organs. And every single one of them was smiling. Not with mouths, with expressions forced into the flesh, as if carved by cruel hands. Then the flare sputtered out. Victor didn't move. They won't kill me. Not yet. But they'll test you. We ran. Down the main corridor, past frozen bodies and sealed labs. The station was waking up like a hive. Lights flickered, doors slammed. And that sound, the pounding heartbeat, kept growing louder. We reached the infirmary and barricaded ourselves in. Kari was bleeding. Something had raked her leg when she tripped. I tore a sleeve from my coat and tied it tight. She winced but said nothing. There were windows along the top edge of the infirmary. Frosted, narrow. I stared out with her and saw 5 or 6 figures standing completely still. Not moving, not breathing, waiting. One of them tilted its head, too far to be natural, and looked straight at us. I felt it in my skull like a spike of ice. Victor's voice crackled through the station intercom suddenly, distorted and eerie. Come to the deep lab, if you want the truth, if you want to understand. I looked at Kari. Her face was pale, but she nodded. So we went. The hallway to the deep lab was a tunnel, steel, narrow, and lined with blast doors. As we moved, the station began changing. The walls literally shifted. We'd look away for a second, and doors would be in new places. Corridors bent subtly, disorienting us. We were being funneled. We reached the lab at the bottom of the stairwell. The door was open. Inside was a massive tank filled with black fluid. Machines surrounded it, some clearly newer than the Soviet era. Surveillance monitors, a bioscanner, and floating inside the tank was a shape, humanoid, but far from human. Its body was stretched, symmetrical in unnatural ways, skin like candle wax. Dozens of small eyes dotted its torso and shoulders. A vertical split ran down its face, closed like a scar. Victor stood beside it, hands folded. "This is one of them," he said, dormant, sedated. The others broke protocol. They tried to escape containment, but this one listens. "What does it want?" I asked, barely able to speak. Victor smiled, sad and tired. "A home, a planet. Evolution was never accidental. We were curated, engineered to be hosts." Suddenly, an alarm blared. Power surged. The tank began to crack. "They're coming for it," Victor shouted. "They don't want it to be used against them." I grabbed Kari and pulled her back. Just as the tank exploded, shards of reinforced glass and freezing fluid spraying the room. The creature hit the floor in a mess of limbs, immediately twitching, growing, changing. Its eyes opened. Every single one of them focused on me. Not Kari. Me. It knew my name, and then it spoke. In a voice I'd heard once in a dream, in a nightmare I couldn't remember until now. "Miles Petrov, you are the key." And before I could move, the lights died again. And the screaming started. The creature's voice shouldn't have been possible. It didn't use a mouth. It didn't vibrate air in the tank like a vocal cord might. The words were in me, like a thought that wasn't mine. An intrusion burrowing deep and fast like a parasite. It didn't speak, it imposed. I couldn't move. Kari grabbed my arm, but my body didn't respond. "Miles," she whispered sharply, "we have to go." Behind her, the laboratory was unraveling. The walls groaned like dying whales. Light bulbs burst in slow red pulses. The shape, the one Victor called the listener, was changing. Its limbs lengthened, fingers dividing into smaller tendrils. Its chest cavity slowly opened to reveal something that wasn't muscle or bone. It looked like a nest. Or a throne. "You are the key," it said again. This time I saw the vibration ripple across the air, distorting the cold fog like heat over pavement. "You carry the code. The blood remembers." Kari fired the flare gun. The shot hit the creature's upper torso, and it reacted immediately, writhing and letting out a high-frequency whine that cracked one of the monitors. The fire caught something oily in its flesh, sending blue flames crawling up its arms. But instead of dying, it simply peeled the burning skin away, revealing smooth, translucent sinew beneath. I was finally able to move. I grabbed Kari and we bolted for the corridor. The station was no longer what it had been, something about the explosion of the tank. It must have released a signal, a frequency. Now the entire base seemed to respond to it. Metal groaned, ice cracked from somewhere deep in the structure. Over the intercom, a garbled voice repeated a single word in Russian, "Pusk." Launch. We climbed the stairwell 2 steps at a time, but when we reached the main level, it wasn't the station we remembered. The hallway was twice as long. Doors had moved. What had once been a lab was now a dormitory. The ceiling curved inward like a throat. Kari pointed out a strange groove in the floor. "That wasn't here before. None of this was." "I think it's rebuilding itself," I said, "using memory, ours." Suddenly, a voice behind us. "Victor, you shouldn't have attacked it. It was speaking to you." We turned, and there he was, barefoot, bleeding from one ear, his eyes pitch black. No iris, no whites, just void. "You made it angry," he said. "You made them aware." And from the corridor behind him came the skittering again, the crawling things. Only this time they were faster. We ran again, through twisted hallways, past rooms we didn't recognize. One had 100 beds lined wall to wall, all filled with frozen corpses in Soviet uniforms. Another was filled with TVs, all broadcasting our own faces, but older, deformed, watching us. We finally broke into the hangar bay. It was wide, cold, and full of half-frozen equipment. A snowcat, a crate of oxygen tanks, old Russian missiles designed for God knows what. Most were marked with Cyrillic words we didn't recognize, except one. Capsula 3. Programa Perezagruzki. Capsule 3. Reboot protocol. Inside the capsule was a sleek-looking coffin covered in frost. It had my name on it, Miles Petrov, and underneath, etched in smaller letters, "To be opened in the event of the return." I stared, throat dry. "This is me." Kari pulled me back. "We need to destroy it. Whatever this is, it was meant to use you." Suddenly, Victor's voice again. "They tried to prepare for this day. They made dozens of you. Only one survived the gestation. You, the prototype. They left the capsule in case the network failed." "What network?" I shouted. "The psychic web, the control field that keeps the originals asleep, buried. It's decaying now. You feel it, don't you? The voices, the memories that aren't yours, the dreams." And he was right. I had felt them. Dreams of strange structures beneath ice, machines built from bone, an ocean of teeth and darkness, a language whispered between cells. I thought they were nightmares. They weren't. I stepped closer to the capsule. Inside was a body, mine. It looked just like me, but older, more emaciated. Its eyes were sewn shut, its hands folded over a black sphere, smooth and perfect like obsidian. Kari began pouring fuel over it. "I'm sorry," she said, looking at me. "But if this is what they want, we can't let them have it." Victor screamed from the catwalk above. "You don't understand. You'll doom everything." Kari lit a flare and dropped it. The fire engulfed the capsule instantly, but the moment it started burning, the base screamed. The walls trembled. A psychic pulse rang out. I could feel it in my teeth. A cold wind tore through the hangar, and from every crack, every floor tile, black veins began to crawl outward, reaching for us. We woke it up, Kari whispered. No, I said, as the capsule cracked open and the body inside began to move, mouth opening soundlessly. It was never asleep. The lights died. And then the storm outside entered the building. Not snow, not air, but something older, rushing in like a flood, carrying whispers and shapes not meant for human eyes. Everything went white. And then, silence. I woke up alone in a corridor that was not the base. It was clean, white, seamless walls and a ceiling of blue light. On either side, glass chambers hummed quietly. White light poured from hidden panels. Machinery with no obvious purpose hummed quietly. Screens flickered with unreadable data, symbols that didn't match any known language, but still stirred something deep in my mind. It wasn't Russian, wasn't human. Footsteps echoed behind me. I turned. It was Carrie, but not the Carrie I knew. Her hair was longer, face pale and marked with strange black veins like ink crawling under her skin. Her eyes, once a deep hazel, were now pure silver. I took a step back. What is this place? What's happening? She smiled gently. You're inside the Ark. The what? This facility. It was built under the ice before the war, before the Soviets, before even humans walked the Earth. That's impossible. Is it? She asked. Or is it just inconvenient to the story you've been told? I felt sick. The chamber seemed to hum in rhythm with my heartbeat. My skin itched. My teeth ached. She approached a console and tapped it with a long black fingernail. One of the screens lit up with an image, the Earth, pulsing red from the poles outward. The ice was receding, fast. Red lines spread across continents like veins under translucent flesh. What is that? I asked. A map of the infection, she said softly. Of the originals waking. Her voice cracked on the last word. She was trying to stay calm, but her hands trembled. They're ancient, she said. More ancient than language, than species. They came here before us, before anything, and we locked them away, buried them beneath a continent of ice and silence. The Ark is the only system left keeping them contained, but the system's failing, Miles. You saw it with your own eyes. Then help me stop them. You don't understand, she said, placing a hand on my chest. You are one of them. The room tilted. No, I whispered, but memories, false memories, crashed through me like waves. Images of black oceans, suns that never rose, structures that pulsed with thought. I saw creatures splitting from others, not born but assembled. I saw 1,000 variations of myself waking in fluid tanks. You were made using genetic fragments recovered from the originals, she said. The Soviets found something in the ice in 1958, a heart, still beating. They thought it was alien tech, but it was something older. They tried to study it, failed. Then they tried to control it. They used its tissue to grow hybrids, weapons, prototypes. Most didn't survive. She touched her own chest. I was one of them too. So was Victor. I stumbled backward. That's not possible. I was born in Novosibirsk. My mother was a surrogate. She never knew. The air felt thin. My pulse thundered in my ears. I turned away and spotted a window. Outside, the world had changed. There was no snow, no sk. Before we move on, please donate me in the form of subscribe. What do you mean? There was a breach, decades ago. One of the originals escaped containment and infected a research team near McMurdo. From there it spread silently, copying, replacing, repurposing. The humans never knew. They thought they were still in control. She showed me another screen. On it, a news broadcast. A city skyline, reduced to ash. Buildings pulsing with organic growths. People screaming as shadows overtook them. It was labeled New York City. June 14th, 2031. That was 6 years from now. This is the future? This is now, she whispered. The Ark has been slowing your perception. You've been in hibernation for over 20 years, Miles. Your consciousness only recently reinitialized. That's why you were seeing cracks in reality, memories that didn't fit, people that didn't act human. I grabbed the edge of a table to steady myself. Why me? Because you were designed to interface with them. You were the bridge, a translator, a failsafe, the final human-compatible model. I felt cold again. Not physical cold, existential. Like I was unraveling. And Victor? He tried to prevent the integration, she said. Tried to destroy the Ark, but he failed. The originals, they got to him, changed him. So why am I here? I asked. Why wake me up now? She walked to the center of the room. A platform rose from the floor, displaying a pulsating sphere, the same one I'd seen in the capsule. Because the last firewall is breaking, she said, and you're the only one who can activate the beacon. What beacon? She looked at me, eyes wet. One that calls them, the others, the ones who fought the originals before, the ones who might still stop them. You want to bring something else here? It's not a choice, Miles. Either we call them or we burn. I looked at the sphere. It pulsed in time with my heartbeat. The room dimmed. The humming grew louder. Suddenly, the facility shook. A long, distant roar reverberated through the walls, something massive moving in the dark. They've found us, Kari whispered. The mirrored door shattered behind us. From the black hallway, something began to crawl out. Long limbs, wet breath, a face made of others. They're inside, she said. You have to decide. Now. I reached for the sphere, and everything went black. When I awoke, I wasn't in the Ark anymore. I stood in a wide, empty field beneath a violet sky, the stars hanging impossibly low, pulsing like living things. The world around me shimmered and bent at the edges, like heat rising from asphalt. There was no wind, no sound, just an overwhelming, crushing presence that made my knees weak. I wasn't alone. To my left, Kari stood with her head bowed, silent. I turned toward the sound of thunder. In the distance, a storm writhed, not made of clouds, but of wriggling limbs and indistinct black shapes, as though thousands of creatures were fusing into one massive wall of chaos. Their shrieking rattled my skull. The originals. They were coming. Victor stepped forward. This is the edge, he said. The boundary between the Ark's signal and the rest of the universe. When the beacon is fully activated, it will send a pulse, something ancient and loud enough to reach the ones who fought the originals before time began. And what if they're worse? I asked. Victor's eyes flicked to me. Then we die faster. I wanted to laugh but couldn't. The air was too dense. I could barely breathe. Kari placed a hand on my shoulder. You don't have much time. You must finish the sequence. In the waking world, they've breached the outer chamber. Suddenly, the sky cracked. A blinding light shot through the void. A signal, a scream, echoed through the dimension, not in sound, but in thought. I dropped to my knees, clutching my skull. My name was being shouted across stars. My real name. I heard it once, long ago, in a dream that never made sense. Mialzreth. The moment I accepted it, the beacon surged. The vision snapped away. I woke up strapped to a metal platform, alarms wailing in the distance. Containment breach in progression ring 03. Organic matter compromised. Vital systems failing. Kari stood over me, pale and panicked. Blood, not hers, streaked her suit. You were out for 3 hours, she said. They've found the core. You need to get up, now. I sat up, mind still buzzing. I saw them. The others. She nodded. Then the signals reached beyond the veil. But will they come? They already are, she whispered. An inhuman shriek shook the walls. The door to the beacon chamber buckled inward. Kari pulled me up and shoved a pack into my hands. Victor is holding them back in the lower corridors. We have to reach the secondary transmitter and launch the global data burst. We're sending your grandfather's research. No, yours. You recorded everything subconsciously through your neural link. Every image, every pattern the originals used to infiltrate. We're sending you. Another impact. Lights flickered, steam hissed from cracked vents. Black fluid began to seep under the doors. Kari led me through a collapsing tunnel, past ruined consoles and shattered observation tanks. Inside one I saw a humanoid corpse with no mouth, no eyes, just smooth, flawless skin. I recognized the face. Mine. Clones, failed versions, discarded prototypes of me. Don't stop, Kari hissed. We reached the transmitter room, cold, silent, and lined with blinking red lights. One console still functioned, powered by a humming core. She pushed me toward it. Plug in. I closed my eyes and placed the neural jack against the port behind my neck. The moment it connected, I felt everything. The arc, the creatures in the dark, the blood-soaked snow, my team's screams, the buried cities, the words scrawled in languages not meant for humans, the whispers, the truth. My vision went white. The signal burst from me in a wave of memory and raw terror. Fabric of reality, carrying my knowledge across frequencies not used since the beginning of time. And somewhere, something heard it. The beacon flared, then silence. Kari slumped beside me, drained. Did it work? I asked. She didn't answer. From the tunnel, something skittered, then a voice. Mialzareth. A shadow slithered into view. 8 limbs jagged like coral. Its head split in 4 directions, revealing a mass of teeth and blinking eyes. It sniffed the air. You reek of defiance, it hissed. You called for the old enemy. You will not be forgiven. I stood between it and the console. No, I whispered. I won't be forgiven. But neither will you. A sound cracked the air, like bones breaking in reverse. From the far side of the chamber, a rift tore open. Inside, swirling stars and colors I had no name for. A shape stepped out, massive, bipedal, glowing faintly. Not quite human, not quite alien. Its eyes locked onto the original. The creature screamed. The war had begun. The rift churned like a bleeding wound in the air. From its core stepped the being I'd seen only in fractured dreams, tall and sinewy, its form made of molten silver, its face shifting constantly between impossible geometries. The very shape of it defied comprehension, like it only pretended to be physical for our benefit. When it moved, it made no sound. But its presence was overwhelming, like standing in the eye of a living star. The original creature shrieked in pure rage and lunged. The being raised a hand, not a weapon, not a gesture of defense, just a raised hand, and the original stopped mid-air, suspended like a fly in amber. It spasmed, chittered, screamed into frequencies my bones could hear, but it was powerless. The silver being rotated its hand slightly, and with a sound like wet fabric tearing, the creature folded into itself and disappeared. Gone. No explosion, no mess, just removed. Kari, slumped on the floor, stared in shock. What the hell is that? I swallowed hard. Not what, who. I think it's one of the others, the ones Victor hoped we'd contact. The being turned toward us. I felt like it was looking through every version of me that ever lived. It stepped forward. Each footfall echoed across dimensions. You are known, it said, but not in words. It spoke straight in. You are a shard, broken from a lineage older than time, a remnant of the wars that scarred the void. That is why the originals fear you. I staggered back. I wanted to argue, deny, scream, but deep inside, I knew it was true. I had never felt whole. My life had always been shadowed by something vast and empty. Now I knew why. The originals hadn't just wanted to kill me, they wanted to reclaim me. Kari gripped my arm. If they know what you are, then they'll never stop. I nodded, which is why we have to end this. The being raised its hand again, and the rift pulsed, revealing a war raging across ice and sky. At McMurdo Station, at Vostok, and even in the oceans, battles between grotesque, spindly originals and these shimmering beings. They fought without fire or bullets. They used thought, geometry, intention. Reality rippled with every strike. But even the others were struggling. The originals had numbers. I turned to the being. What do we do? You return to the source, it answered. Beneath the beacon lies the first breach. There the seed must be closed, but only you can enter. Why? Because you were born from its echo. Only a fragment can seal the wound. My hands trembled. What happens to me? The being gave no answer. The rift sealed behind it. Kari and I prepared in silence. The beacon's lower chamber, sealed for decades, now stood open, a hole in the ice that pulsed with a low, humming energy. It wasn't man-made, it wasn't even Earth-made, it was a wound in space. Descending the spiral ramp was like diving into a different world. The walls shifted with faint, bioluminescent runes. The deeper we went, the louder the whispers grew. They weren't language anymore, they were memory, emotion, regret. I heard Victor's voice, I heard my mother's lullabies, I heard myself screaming as a child in a dream I never remembered having. At the bottom was the source. It looked like a monolith, jet black and taller than any skyscraper, embedded halfway into the ice, like it had fallen from the stars. Pulses of red moved within it, like a slow beating heart. I stepped forward. A tremor rippled through the floor. Come home, a voice said. Not the others, not the originals, but something older, something behind both. I turned to Kari. If I don't come back, you won't, she said softly, but maybe the rest of us will get a future. I nodded and placed my palm against the monolith. The world blinked. I wasn't in Antarctica anymore. I was inside the source. A maze of spirals stretched around me, infinite and alive. Every surface twisted and breathed, reflecting my thoughts back at me. This was the birthplace of the originals, a reality engine built before. I wasn't a person then. I was a weapon. I had betrayed the others and opened the gate. This place was my prison. That was the final piece Victor had never told me. I had caused the first breach, and now I had to seal it. The source recognized me, its walls lit with a painful bright light. I reached out and pulled every part of myself together. Not just this body, every echo, every failure, every version that died, screaming. Every nightmare, every memory. I became whole. And then I let go. The monolith imploded inward. Above, in the beacon chamber, the ice cracked open, and the originals howled in agony as the wound closed. Their connection to the source, their power, began to collapse. Across the continent, they shrieked and fell apart, twitching into dust. The war wasn't over, but the tide had turned. Kari stood alone in the snow, watching the aurora spiral overhead. The beacon had gone dark, the others had vanished, and I was gone. Or so she thought. Then the wind shifted, and beneath it, a faint voice echoed in the ice. Not forgiven, but no longer broken. Kari didn't leave the beacon for days. She moved like a ghost through the snow-covered ruins, checking systems, mapping the aftermath. No more sirens, no more screams, just an eerie, crystalline quiet that blanketed the world. Even the winds had grown softer, almost reverent. But there was no mistaking it. Something had changed. The originals were gone. Whatever Levi had done within the source had worked. The monolith, deep beneath the beacon, had vanished completely, leaving behind only fractured ice and pulsing veins of melted permafrost. Heat radiated upward from the scar, as if the earth itself were cauterizing a wound. Still, Kari didn't feel peace. She felt watched. On the third night, while surveying the crater left by the monolith, her radio crackled. At first, it was just static. But then, Kari. She froze. The voice was faint, distorted, but familiar. Not gone, still here. Levi, she whispered. Need. Your help. Beneath. The signal died. She stared at the radio in disbelief, then looked back at the beacon. She had sworn she'd never go down there again, but she also knew she would. The shaft beneath the beacon had changed. What used to be a metal spiral staircase was now just jagged, half-formed ledges descending through ice slick with dark veins. Carrie lowered herself carefully, flashlight flickering as she moved deeper into the wound. Strange heat pulsed up through her boots. The lower she went, the more she felt it. Not fear exactly, but memory. Thoughts that weren't hers. Visions of endless dark corridors, of screaming stars, of Levi standing in the source, dissolving into a spiral of light. Before we move on, please donate me in the form of subscribe. Fractures in reality shimmered along the walls, and in the center, hovering just above the light. Levi. His body was intact but wrong. He looked human, still wore his torn parka, still had the same blue eyes, but his skin shimmered faintly, as if something inside was trying to shine through. Carrie, he said softly, you came. She stepped closer. I heard your voice. I thought you were gone. I was, he said. Part of me still is. I became something else in the source. Something that could seal the breach. But the wound wasn't just in space, it was in time. He gestured at the chasm. This is a backflow. The breach is still healing, but some of what we locked away, it's trying to escape through the past. We didn't stop them completely. We slowed them, delayed them. Kari stared down into the pit. Inside the glow, she saw movement, shapes crawling up. How do we stop it? Levi looked at her, and she saw the strain behind his eyes. I need to anchor the wound, he said. But I'm not enough. Not anymore. The source fed on me, used me. I'm half-bound now, neither human nor other. So what do you need? He looked up at her and whispered, a tether. Kari didn't hesitate. She descended into the pit. The light swallowed her instantly. She felt like she was falling through glass. Shattering reflections of herself spiraled past. Ages of choices she never made, lives she never lived. Her lungs burned, her ears rang, but she kept moving. At the bottom was nothingness, and in the center of that, the seed. It pulsed like a dying sun, black and orange and ancient. It wasn't just the wound, it was the origin, a collapsed star of consciousness that had given birth to the originals. Levi floated beside it, eyes glowing. I can suppress it, he said, but only if you hold me here. How? She asked. Your mind, your will, you have to remember me. Everything. Anchor me to what I was, before this place, before all of it. He extended his hand. She took it. The seed screamed. It tried to stop them. First came the dreams, visions of Kari's brother dying again in the crevasse. Then her father's funeral. Then the vision of Levi choking her, blaming her, hating her. All lies. She held on. Then came the temptations, a vision of the earth, healed and whole, if she just let the seed bloom. A world without death, without fear. But it was hollow, a corpse in disguise. She held on. Last came the truth. The seed showed her Levi, not as he had been, but as he truly was. The original fragment within him. The betrayal in ancient eons. The source. And then, silence. Kari woke on the surface. Days had passed. The sky above the beacon was clear for the first time in months. The ice had stopped groaning. The air was still, cold, but alive. The beacon itself was gone, collapsed into a smooth basin filled with frozen mist. No bodies, no ruins, just silence. She stood for a long time, watching the aurora flicker green and blue. Then she heard it again. A breath. Right behind her. She turned, expecting Levi. But it wasn't him. It was a figure dressed in the same shimmering silver as the others. Its eyes were black voids. Kari stared. "Is it over?" The being shook its head slowly. "No, the seed was but one root. Others remain. In the ice. In the stars. In you." She felt her stomach twist. "In me? You tethered the wound. You carry its echo." And then, without another word, it vanished. That night, as she sat alone outside her shelter, Kari looked down at her hands. Beneath the skin, in her veins, something flickered. Not light, not blood, but memory. The wind was a low, mournful moan outside Kari's shelter, a sound that seeped into her bones and refused to let go. She had barely slept since the encounter with the shimmering figure, the one who told her the fight wasn't over. Her hands twitched involuntarily, the strange flicker beneath her skin pulsing like a faint heartbeat. She could feel it, something alien coursing through her veins. Not sickness, but something else. A legacy. A curse. Kari wasn't sure if she was still herself. The beacon was gone. The source had collapsed, or so she thought, yet the cold silence around her screamed otherwise. She glanced at her radio, hoping for a sign. No response. No chatter. No contact from the outside world. Alone. And watched. She spent the next days documenting everything she could remember. The visions, the monolith, Levi's transformation, the seed beneath the ice. Her journal became a ledger of nightmares and truth, a record for anyone who might survive. She couldn't risk sending it out yet. The government's lies were too thick. Any transmission could be erased, twisted, or worse, ignored. Kari had to survive first. She ventured out, retracing her steps toward the crater where the monolith once hovered. The ice was cracked and unstable, glistening with dark veins that pulsed faintly under the cold light. And then she saw them, footprints. Not like before, smaller, more deliberate. She followed the trail with growing unease. The footprints led away from the crater, heading deeper into the ice shelf, a place no one dared explore after the beacon fell. Her mind, a voice echoed, not human, a whisper, a memory. Kari, she spun around, heart pounding, but the camp was empty, just wind and ice. The voice was a lure, a call from the abyss. She wanted to run, but something deeper held her in place. Levi's last words came back. The seed was but one root, others remain, in the ice, in the stars, in you. Had she already become one of them? Her breath hitched as her fingers twitched again. The flicker beneath her skin flared brighter, like a pulse syncing with the world's heartbeat. She was no longer just human. Back in the shelter, Kari's body betrayed her. She felt heat rising beneath her skin, her veins glowing faintly blue. Shadows shifted at the edges of her vision. Whispered words crawled across her mind, foreign yet familiar. Her hands clenched the journal, fingers trembling. Suddenly, the door slammed open. A figure stepped inside, dressed in the same shimmering silver as the being at the beacon's edge. "Kari," it said, voice echoing like a distant storm. "You carry the echo. You are both the key and the prison." Kari's voice was barely a whisper. "What do you want from me?" "To awaken." The figure raised its hand, and Kari's memories exploded. She saw visions of ancient wars, creatures from the dark corners of the universe, fighting to claim Earth as their own. She saw Levi's transformation, the sacrifice that had tethered the wound, but not healed it. She saw herself, not as a scientist, but as a beacon, a bridge between humanity and the originals. And then, the truth hit her like a hammer. Her body was no longer her own. The flicker wasn't a curse. It was evolution. The originals weren't invaders, they were ancestors. Long before humans walked the Earth, these beings had shaped the planet, hidden in the ice, waiting for the right moment to reclaim what was theirs. Kari was the first step. Why me? She choked. Because you can remember, the figure said. Because your mind is strong enough to hold the past and the future. Carrie felt tears sting her eyes. The isolation, the paranoia, the endless fight. It was all part of something bigger. She was a vessel, a warning, a weapon, and a prisoner. Days blurred. Carrie's body began to change. The flicker beneath her skin spread, veins glowing softly beneath her flesh. Her senses sharpened. The cold didn't bite anymore. She could hear the ice breathe, the distant calls of the originals lurking beneath the glaciers. She was no longer a mere researcher. She was something else. And the originals were awakening. One night, the sky cracked open with a terrible roar. The aurora above the ice twisted unnaturally, tendrils of green and purple lightning swirling like cosmic serpents. The ground trembled beneath Carrie's feet. She knew the time had come. The originals are real. They're here. They're waking. She paused. We are not alone, and we are not safe. The radio hissed with static, but Carrie felt something else. A faint pulse, a signal, a call, from deep beneath the ice, and from beyond the stars. The aurora shattered the Antarctic night, painting the sky with eerie green and violet ribbons that twisted like living things. Carrie's breath came in slow, measured bursts. Her body, no longer fully human, pulsed faintly with the glow of something ancient and otherworldly beneath her skin. The originals were stirring beneath the ice, rising from their millennia-long slumber. She adjusted the radio's frequency, fingers glowing softly as she transmitted her warning once again. This is Carrie. To any survivors. The originals are awake. They are not beasts, they are hunters, strategists, ancient predators. If you hear this, prepare to fight. Static hissed back, then silence. No rescue, no response, only the howling wind. Days passed, or was it hours? Time lost meaning in the frozen wasteland where light and dark bled into one another. Carrie's senses were sharper than ever, the ice itself whispering secrets beneath her feet. She was no longer just a researcher. She was the bridge between worlds, the last sentinel against a horror that defied comprehension. She had to move. There was a remote outpost rumored to hold a covert task force, rogue operatives assembled to combat threats the world denied. If anyone could stop the originals, or at least slow them down, it was them. With a final glance at the shattered remnants of her camp, Carrie set off across the ice, guided by the pulsing signal within her. The journey was brutal. Blinding storms clawed at her face. Crevices yawned like hungry jaws. But Carrie was relentless. At last, she reached the outpost, an underground bunker carved into the ice, bristling with weapons and surveillance gear. She was met by Commander Malik and his team, grizzled soldiers hardened by battles both human and unearthly. "We've been expecting you," Malik said, eyes shadowed but wary. Carrie nodded. "The originals are coming. They're evolving, coordinating. We don't have much time." The plan was desperate but clear. Using Victor's research and her own knowledge, they aimed to target the hive mind beneath the ice, an ancient neural network binding the originals together. Destroy it, and the creatures would lose their coordination, their terrifying intelligence. But to reach it, they had to descend into the ice shelf's deepest cavern, the cradle of the originals. Armed with experimental weapons and a map of hidden tunnels, Carrie led the team downward into the abyss. The cavern was a cathedral of ice and shadow, walls shimmering with unnatural bioluminescence, echoes of distant growls reverberating through the vast emptiness. The team's flashlights barely pierced the darkness. Suddenly, tall, sleek, and horrifyingly intelligent, eyes glowing with cold fire, claws clicking against the ice. They attacked with terrifying precision. One by one, the soldiers fell, screams swallowed by the cavern's maw. Carrie fought with everything she had, the flicker inside her igniting in a surge of power. She was not just human now. She was the original's kin. In the heart of the cavern, Carrie found the neural nexus, a sprawling, pulsating web of biotechnological tendrils embedded in the ice. Her fingers brushed the surface. Visions flooded her mind, the originals' history, their pain, their hunger for survival. She understood. They were not evil, they were the planet's original sentinels, displaced and betrayed. But humanity's survival depended on stopping them. With a cry, Carrie activated the explosive charges. The nexus began to collapse. As the cavern crumbled, Carrie escaped just in time, the ice sealing the abyss forever, at least for now. But the cost was high. Malik's team was gone. The world would never know. Back on the surface, Carrie stared at the horizon, where the first rays of dawn broke the endless night. Her radio crackled. A voice, weak, distant. "Is anyone there? This is a rescue team. Coordinates 74 degrees south. Repeat." Hope stirred. She keyed the radio. "This is Carrie. I'm here. The originals are real. They're not done, and neither am I." The battle was over, but the war had just begun. Because as the ice melted, the originals would awaken beyond Antarctica, and humanity would have to face the ancient terror beneath its feet. Carrie's final message echoed across the frozen wasteland. "Beware the silence beneath the ice. The originals are coming."